This isn't abnormal at all what we're seeing. The Bitcoin in general is very boring when it comes to the price. There's periods of time where we see these parabolic moves. So, the past 6 months is business as usual when it comes to Bitcoin. It'll move up and down. It'll range sideways for, a majority of its life. But then you have kind of these points in the cycle where you see massive pumps and then you usually see a massive pullback. That's just technically what we've seen, but I definitely believe we're in a very different environment. I think everyone could agree on that with, the institutional adoption that we've seen. I recall that narrative back, it's probably, closer to the end of the 2017 bull cycle leading into 2020. Everyone was saying the institutions are coming. Obviously that didn't happen, but now we finally have, Wall Street joining with their ETFs. It feels like every week we have a new company or pension fund announcing they're adopting a Bitcoin strategy, even if it's on a 1-2% basis, very small. I think over time that's the real big shift that we're going to see. So it's quite exciting to me to see that we are having this massive adoption at an institutional level while having an extremely boring price.
So Alex has been in Bitcoin for quite a while now. He's going to share his story. He works with Swan and he looks Swan Private. He looks after their education and he looks after their clients on a private level. So Alex, welcome to the show. How did you find Bitcoin and how has it changed your life?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Looking forward to this conversation. Yeah, I'm Alec Bakhouche. I work with Swan on the private team, work one-to-one with clients, helping them onboard to Bitcoin, any of their financial services needs around Bitcoin in general. Yeah, my story when it comes to Bitcoin started about 2017. I think similar story to most, like yourself, kind of entered through, the crypto side of things, played around with a bunch of different altcoins. I think what initially got me interested, I have a sales background. So, I worked for various software companies, selling software as a service to businesses. And as a salesperson, you're always looking for, how can I make some extra money? Where can I find some gains at? So that's initially what drew me in to the crypto side of things, seeing all these people making a bunch of money off all these different coins, etc. And, that didn't work out very well for me at all, as it does. It doesn't for most, a lot of them pump and dump and whatnot. So, I kind of held on to a couple of those coins for, honestly, it took me like 4 years to finally get my grip. It wasn't until 2020, 2021 where I finally picked up the Bitcoin Standard and various other Bitcoin books and podcasts and actually decided to look into what this Bitcoin thing was, because I noticed my altcoins were all extremely negative and they were not recovering, and I watched Bitcoin do this, massive rise comeback. As it was starting that new cycle through 2020, 2021. So that's what finally got me to pick up, a book. Highly recommend the Bitcoin Standard, just understanding the past, what money is, how it works, why these things are happening, especially in that 2020 era when, a bunch of money was being printed. So yeah, I felt extremely grateful having the opportunity to live through that time and, dive into the education surrounding Bitcoin and money. But yeah, ever since, I grabbed that book, I just have been absolutely obsessed. I listen to podcasts every single day still surrounding Bitcoin. Still have some of my favorite Bitcoin books, always trying to add to my collection up there. Um, yeah, it's just something that I could not get enough of. And all I would do during work every single day is, while I'm making my cold calls, working for software companies, I was either scrolling Twitter, I was listening to podcasts like in between my calls. So yeah, one day I was just like, hey, all I do is study Bitcoin. I should probably look at working in Bitcoin as well. I might enjoy that a lot more. So that's kind of what drew me to looking for work in the Bitcoin space. And it's been an absolute dream come true, landing a position at Swan and, talking to people about Bitcoin all day. Absolutely love it.
Nice, very nice, great. Yeah, it's really amazing, isn't it? When you really get into Bitcoin, you start understanding what it is. It's a whole mindset shift, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of it aligns with kind of who I am as a person as well. And this kind of goes with your question, how's it changed things for me? I'd always been a big gamer kid. I always played, World of Warcraft going up, RuneScape, games like that, where, I'd love to collect as much of the in-game token as possible and save to buy like the coolest items out there. So I always had a very game theory savings mindset from that. So really, the ethos around Bitcoin, just stacking Sats, is something that I enjoy thoroughly. It's translated from the video game world to real life, and when I was doing that with dollars, it's incredibly difficult, right? When we deal with inflation and all these complex financial instruments that you have to use in order to outperform inflation. um, I'm a terrible stock trader. Crypto stocks, I always did absolutely horrible. So, you know, th- finding Bitcoin was the one thing that I'm finding like, all right, I got this. I can do this. All I have to do is stack this stuff, go work and save in Bitcoin. And yeah, it's completely changed my, financial life and, really everything in my life, even the way I think, my time preference, the things I want to purchase. I think about greatly because I think about what the opportunity cost is in the future. If I spend 5 grand today, how much Bitcoin is that and how much could that be worth in the future? It's a thought with every single purchase that I make in life. So it's really brought me to value things a lot more and, think about, what I'm allocating my time and money to, on a daily basis.
Yeah. And how would you describe the current state of Bitcoin, the current market, like at the moment? Yeah. Just say during the summer, like for the last 2 months, July, August. Yeah. What are the significant trends that you're seeing out there or changes that you've noticed recently?
Yeah, honestly, I don't see too much difference. I haven't been through many cycles, but from what I've studied, researched, and talked with others on is, this isn't abnormal at all what we're seeing. That Bitcoin in general is very boring when it comes to the price. There's only short periods of time where we see these parabolic moves. So, the past 6 months is business as usual when it comes to Bitcoin. It'll move up and down. It'll range sideways for, a majority of its life. But then you have kind of these points in the cycle where you see massive pumps and then you usually see a massive pullback. That's just technically what we've seen, but I definitely believe we're in a very different environment. I think everyone could agree on that with, the institutional adoption that we've seen. I I recall that narrative back, you know, it's probably, closer to the end of the 2017 bull cycle leading into 2020. Everyone was saying the institutions are coming. Obviously, that didn't happen, but now we finally have, Wall Street joining with their ETFs. We're seeing, it feels like every week we have a new company or pension fund announcing they're adopting a Bitcoin strategy, even if it's on a 2% basis, very small. I think over time, that's the real big shift that we're going to see. So, it's quite exciting to me to see that we are having this massive adoption at an institutional level while having an extremely boring price. That tells me that there is a real fundamental shift happening. So when we get one of these parabolic moves, it may look quite a bit different than what we've seen in the past. It may be greater. And when we see a pullback, maybe it won't be as harsh. Maybe we won't ever see these price levels we're at today again. I'm excited just to see kind of how this plays out because there's just so much bullish news and it's not moving the price. So that excites me. That's boring to some people, but I find that exciting.
Yeah, 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 definitely. And what can you see like the most significant regulatory developments surrounding Bitcoin in 2024? Now, there might be some new people watching this program, so that's why I like to just could go into that a little bit. Yeah, both in the US and globally. And how can you see that impacting Bitcoin adoption?
Yeah, it's definitely become a lot easier for businesses and entities to start acquiring Bitcoin. Really the ETF stamp of approval changed everything for that side of the industry. Right now that Larry Fink and BlackRock and Fidelity, are able to provide a securitized product surrounding Bitcoin, it's much easier for companies, pension funds, all these other allocators to finally say, hey, we actually have an instrument we can use. Because in the past, acquiring actual BTC is a massive challenge for organizations, not only the legal and regulatory compliance, but also how the heck do they hold this stuff? Are they going to buy it on FTX and trust a company that might collapse? Right? Most likely not. That's way too high of a risk. But, holding Bitcoin wrapped in this security that's held by the largest asset managers in the world, provides that comfort. It lowers the risk massively. So I think that's one that just opened the doorway for them. And then we had a change in, different accounting rules with the FASB accounting rules here in the US. Um, I think that really just the ETFs, even on a global impact, it just provided that stamp of approval that these folks that control the most money in the world are okay with it. They are selling it, and you should buy some too. I think they're going to be the largest marketing driver for us. I haven't seen too much, advertisement from the likes of BlackRock and Fidelity yet, but I think that is to come. Um, as soon as more and more of these brokers are able to actually talk to their clients about it, sell them on allocating it to their portfolio. And I would add the last thing that I think brings a lot more adoption is when these start being added to some more of the general funds that these institutions offer. There's trillions in value locked up in, pension plans, 401ks that have these very general, broad uh, investment buckets. When they start adding a 1 or 2% allocation to, these more general funds, someone's not making the decision, oh, I need to go buy some Bitcoin. It's like, I'm just investing in this general fund that Fidelity offers, and there's a slight allocation of Bitcoin in there. Um, I think that's going to be the next big wave. There's probably only 1 or 2 that have started doing that. So I'm excited to see, more and more adoption to, adding Bitcoin within those more generalized funds.
Definitely. Yeah. Once these big funds and these big institutions really start, because I think from what we can see now as well, and what was announced recently at the Bitcoin event in Nashville, these institutions haven't even really started.
No, not at all. It's all, I mean, mainly retail. I mean, the institutions that have announced, it's a 1% here, 2% there. Still pretty small stuff. Couple pension funds.
Yeah. So what sectors do you think are really driving the most adoption of Bitcoin this year? Yeah.
Uh,
And what are the new and unexpected industries or regions embracing Bitcoin, do you think, in a meaningful way?
yeah. From what I've seen, it's still all retail based. Um, everyone buying these ETFs are mostly individuals like me and you. What I notice is in terms of demographic, it's generally going to be older, maybe 50 plus age range. Folks that have heard about Bitcoin, maybe their son or daughter talked to them about it. They saw these, news articles, and now that they're hearing positive news surrounding Bitcoin, they have their traditional finance fund there at, Fidelity. They're saying, hey, why not move a portion over? It's simple, just a couple clicks inside my Fidelity account. I don't have to go learn, how to self custody, not your keys, not your coins, use hardware wallets and all that, right? There's just such a minimal barrier to entry there. and they have the most amount of wealth, right? I do still struggle to see, younger individuals adopt Bitcoin at this point. Some do, maybe not on a very meaningful level as of yet. So, in my experience, it's mostly, those gold bugs, longer term investors that, have been paying attention but never took the risk or time to educate themselves on how to acquire real Bitcoin. So they're starting there with the ETF, and I believe eventually they'll move to some, actually holding Bitcoin itself over time. Um, where we go next, I think, as in any bull market, anybody and everybody's going to try to get their hands on it. Old, young, it's just mania. Everyone's just going to buy Bitcoin, not knowing what it is or understanding it. They'll probably grab some other crypto assets along with it. And ideally, we all learn our lesson one way or the other. Hopefully, they'll pick up a book like the Bitcoin Standard and try to understand this thing. But, even I myself had to watch my asset value go down 90% to actually wake me up to educate myself. So I think we see a very similar thing play out this cycle again, maybe on a larger scale, because it's like, hey, Larry Fink said to buy it, so I'm jumping into Bitcoin and don't think twice about it, right? There's less, it's lowered that, it's shifted the window. So I think it's going to be an easier decision for people to jump on because there's more proof, social proof there for them.
Yeah, yeah. And then how do you think like macroeconomics factors such as inflation or the performance of traditional markets, how does that influence Bitcoin landscape? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't see many folks understanding, the cause of inflation. There's always this large battle. Bitcoin's not a hedge against inflation, things like that. So at the end of the day, when more money supply is created, whether it's in the dollar, the euro, the yen, whatever currency it is, more of that is going to flow to hard assets, whether it be Bitcoin, stocks, real estate, whatever it is, right? But I think in time, Bitcoin eats up more and more of that share, especially as people start to learn, educate themselves. And like I mentioned, the barrier to entry is lower. There's more social proof, so there's less research that people will have to do to get their foot in the door. More and more of that liquidity flows to Bitcoin over time. So I think that problem is just going to get worse. Of course, we're seeing interest rates are about to get lowered here in the United States. That's been kind of happening across the globe at this point. So I think, Lynn Alden says it, nothing stops this train. Like whatever happens, global economics is going to continue. Um, all we can do is try to educate on Bitcoin and realize that, hey, there's this asset. There's only a certain amount. If you have unlimited over here, you might as well move some to finite supply. It's simple math that it's going to increase in purchasing power over time. So, although it's an insanely simple idea and concept, you still hear even some presidential candidates and members of Congress here in the United States, they talk about, it's corporate greed causing inflation. They're just price gouging. We need to set price controls. Ultimately, I think they try to keep the narrative shifted away from them, point the problem towards corporations versus the government is actually the one causing this problem with their deficit spending and their money creation. So I think that, people just, it's going to take time for that, drape to be opened. I don't know if that'll be the massive narrative that drives people to Bitcoin. I still think its number go up is the most powerful thing. But to me, it's a savings tool. I know that I cannot save in dollars. I want my money to be able to buy me more in the future, not less. So I would hope people find tools to do that. Again, stocks is the traditional thing. I did a terrible job there. I could always buy the S&P 500, but that thing even barely keeps up with inflation. You can go real estate. It's a pain in the butt. I own my house, maintaining this thing. I couldn't imagine being a landlord and renting to people. That's an absolute nightmare. I'd never want to get into that. Um, or, you have to be like this sophisticated stock trader or investor on top of having your day job, which I just don't think is realistic for the average person. We shouldn't have to be an expert in finance just to save money. So that's the beauty of Bitcoin to me. But I think it'll take a while for people to move to Bitcoin for that reason.
And to be honest, there's probably not enough pain at the moment,
Yeah.
yeah, for people to really start looking at this. Yeah. Like in 2008, 2009, we've seen some real pain, but I think we're on the verge of that, maybe, from a lot of the factors are pointing at something big about to happen. Yeah. So regarding that, how has public perception, do you think, of Bitcoin evolved over the past year? Yeah. And is any noticeable shifts in sentiment, whether positive or negative?
Yeah, I definitely think the general public is more open to it. You're not going to go around and ask someone, "Hey, have you ever heard of Bitcoin?" and get a no response at this point. I think just about, I mean, given some more rural areas and things, but the average person has heard of Bitcoin. They may just not know anything about it at this point, right? So I think that's a step in the right direction. And especially with, I'm seeing it on the news almost every single day here in the United States. So, that continues to drive. And, as soon as really that 100,000 mark, I think is the cusp, right? Once these news articles start dropping about Bitcoin passing 100K, that's when, this big pile in starts to happen. But there's been quite a bit of a shift. I'm not getting so many negative responses like I did in the past. When FTX was fresh on people's minds, it was like, oh, no way, I'm not touching that. Complete scam. I'm gonna get robbed, or I did, get scammed or robbed by X, Y, or Z. So that's calmed down a lot. And it's mostly positive sentiment, not that people are super interested in Bitcoin. The average person I'm talking to is, not begging me to help onboard them to Bitcoin at this point. But they're definitely more open to it. I get asked a lot of questions just in day-to-day life when I'm going to the gym. I'll get text messages from friends, just, they heard something about Bitcoin on the news or something with the price. Much more positive sentiment, I would say. A lot of the negativity's kind of been washed out over this past year.
I think myself, it's probably going to be more of as time goes on, maybe in this year and early next year, and people start doing their work on Bitcoin. It could be really as well, and especially maybe people that are in stock markets and people that are holding gold. Yeah, it's probably going to be maybe especially if things change the way we can see them, maybe changing the geopolitical circle and different events that are going on around the world. It's probably going to be more of a, as Larry Fink says, flight to quality. But as we say, it's a flight to safety more.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been interesting to think through the potentials, the RFK speech at the Bitcoin conference, building a strategic reserve for the government acquiring 4 million Bitcoin. As exciting as that sounds for someone that holds Bitcoin, it's interesting to think about what those implications could be. If one nation state decides to do this, others are going to have to look at that strategy as well. Does it cause kind of this competing battle? And in order to acquire that much Bitcoin, most likely it's going to come from printing currency. So how fast, do they start printing, and what are the implications to the citizens that don't hold Bitcoin yet? It's going to devalue the US dollar or whatever currency it is uh, to no end. Um, yeah, I'm very interested to see how a lot of this plays out with how the governments are thinking about it. To me, it seems more of a campaign donation play at this point. I love that there's been some bills introduced, but it's very common for these bills to get introduced and then just ignored over time. So it's like, hey, check out my bill, donate to me, and then we'll forget about you for the next 4 years. So I think we have at least one more election cycle here in the U.S. before the government actually picks up any type of Bitcoin strategy. It's nice to hear that, hey, at least we won't sell the Bitcoin we have. That's fine enough for me, as well as let the industry grow and prosper. Stop putting this choke point on the companies that are trying to operate here in the US or globally. We've seen, things happen outside of the US as well. Just um, yeah, I think we need to let the industry grow and prosper so we can get Bitcoin in more hands of individuals before the government start piling in, because it's just going to push it that much farther away. $1 million per coin Bitcoin, is going to be very difficult for the average person to acquire, right? So I want more and more individuals before government entities.
Yeah, definitely. And let's talk a little bit about security a bit and risks, okay? What do you think are the most pressing security challenges facing Bitcoin today? And uh, there are new types of risks that users and institutions need to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not advanced on the technical sides of Bitcoin, so I can't speak too much of like protocol security risks, things like that. But on the
Or even
individual level,
yeah, individual stuff even because
yeah,
I know Swan really encourages people to take self custody of their own Bitcoin. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I hold self-custody sessions, for my clients on the regular. Um, just trying to educate people on what this actually means, because it's a pretty new concept to most people, and they don't think of it quite like, it's very, very similar to just holding cash. So it's, how do you protect yourself and how do you not just give away your money? I think the biggest issue we see today is the lack of understanding of how Bitcoin is accessed and how ownership works. Time and time again, I hear these horror stories of, I took self custody of my Bitcoin. I got this random phone call and I gave them my seed phrase and they stole my Bitcoin. That is probably the number one way people lose Bitcoin today. It's not because they kept it on FTX or, any of the platforms today are falling. It's because they've done what is perceived to be the right thing, taking self custody, but they don't truly understand what the responsibility is. Um, so that's where I personally want to spend a lot more time on creating educational content so people actually understand what the implications of self custody are. I've got these 12 or 24 words, and this is the most important secret of your life, especially if you're storing your life savings with it, right? You can't be taking photos of it on your phone. There's so many, technological attack vectors through your cell phone. So that's one big way. There's AI tools now that be installed on your phone without you knowing it. They'll scan your entire camera roll. You're accepting, every app you use, social media wise, you're giving permission to your photos. So therefore, if you took a picture of your private key, Instagram has it. If Instagram has some type of issue, people gets in their database, however that works technically, they could nab your seed phrase, right? So there's so many potential ways to lose your Bitcoin when you take self custody as well. Um, I think people are their own worst enemy. That's really the biggest issue I see going forward.
Can you explain a little bit for new viewers, yeah, the difference between single sig and multi sig
Yeah,
storage?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, multi-sig is kind of the new big way, best way to hold Bitcoin in self-custody, because it eliminates that single point of failure. So when you are taking self-custody of Bitcoin, traditionally, you would use a cold storage device, a hardware wallet. These are pretty similarly intermingled terms. And when you use this device, it's generating your private key, which is essentially your password that gives permission to use the Bitcoin that you have. And it comes in the form of 12 or 24 words that's referred to as a seed phrase, right? So single sig is I have one hardware wallet with one private key, meaning that is a single point of failure. If anything happens to it, lost, stolen, damaged, my Bitcoin is gone. There's nothing anybody can do about it. So what multi-sig solves for is requiring multiple private keys to sign. The most common, and there's many different ways these can be set up, but the most common you're going to see is three private keys in they call it a quorum, where two of which are required to sign to process a transaction. So the whole idea here is if one of those private keys is ever compromised, no big deal. Someone can steal it. They cannot access your Bitcoin because they need two of them. So you would store them in separate locations. There's quite a few companies now that offer a collaborative model where the company will actually hold one of these private keys for you. You keep one at home, and then you store one in a separate location. That way, anytime you need to process a transaction, all you need is that one hardware wallet, same type of thing as single sig, and then my account with that company. I can go in, I can transact. But if I lose that one I maintain, lost, stolen, damaged, whatever happens, no big deal. I go get my backup. I contact the company. We have two keys. We can, move my Bitcoin to a new multi-sig setup. So I definitely think that's the next motion. There's always going to be a lot of pain. People are going to lose Bitcoin through single sig setups, as we spoke about, whether it's social engineering attacks or just mistakes on their part. And I think the next big wave is everybody's going to be operating on some type of multi-sig. Um, I even get uncomfortable just having a single sig wallet and going on vacation. I don't like knowing that I have this 12 or 24 words in one place that I am not with, and it's a single point of failure holding wealth, right? That makes me super uncomfortable. So I'm personally a big advocate and adopter of multi-sig.
Yeah, it's definitely the future. Yeah, yeah, you can see more and more and more solutions coming out there, and companies helping individuals with this. Yeah. So how is Swan Bitcoin helping to educate and onboard new users into the Bitcoin ecosystem? Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about that. And are there any specific programs or tools that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's multiple different ways. On our website, we of course have educational material. So through all the outreach we do, our digital footprint, we lead people to our website. Obviously they can very easily set up an account and start buying Bitcoin. But we always lead them to, through emails and different in-app pop-ups to point them towards our learn page where all of our education lives. So there's articles written by I don't think I personally have one up there as of yet, but many of my colleagues go through and write, about multi-sig or uh, macroeconomic environment, all these different topics that surround Bitcoin. So for those that enjoy reading, that's a fantastic place. But we're also big on media. So, we've grown a large YouTube channel, over 100,000 subscribers, with our daily show and different content clips from different podcasts, from people that represent the Bitcoin space. We're always sharing. So, kind of across all these different mediums, we try to put out education and material. But when you come into, the Swan umbrella, you open an account. We provide humans, whether it's through our support team or individuals like myself on Swan Private, not only to come and purchase Bitcoin with us. I think a big incentive is, we waive fees for the first 10,000 in purchases. So it's just like, hey, come buy some Bitcoin. You're not going to pay any additional fees. Uh, just come see what it's about and come learn. And then, the next motion is, hey, are you aware you can take self custody? We don't charge for this. You should withdraw your Bitcoin. But first, you might need to educate yourself. Here's some material. And we've just announced our own multi-sig solution called Swan Vault. So I think that's kind of that next motion that, we've been talking about. A lot of people are going single sig now. They're going to shift to multi-sig, but there's definitely still a large education curve that needs to happen there. And I think there's some pain that needs to happen to really push people to multi-sig. You know, uh, People that sit down and think about it, they understand that fear alone will drive them to multi-sig, but others just need to experience, pain before they move there. Um, so I think that's one great way. And, our team provides a fantastic concierge onboarding session for it, not only to help them set it up, but to educate, here's how you properly store your keys. You should store them in separate locations. You should think about getting yourself a metal plate to stamp your seed phrase into. Here's a recovery kit. Use tamper-proof bags when you're storing your backup one to make sure it's not compromised. You might want to do quarterly checks on this. There's so many different things you can do to enhance your security. Of course, you can keep it simple. Not everything's required, but learning about what you can do to best enhance your security is important. So we try to provide just a hands-on, one-to-one experience to do that, which is super, super important.
Definitely, definitely. Yes, especially with people's educational process and learning about it. Yeah. So what can you see as some of the biggest challenges you face yourself, yeah, coming in the future with Bitcoin and all this adoption and everything?
Yeah. Um, I mean, right now, a lot of it's, there's this regulatory gray cloud, it seems like, over the space. Sun shines through it for a minute, but then the cloud cover comes back. That's my biggest question mark is, at least for the United States, how companies are able to flourish. Um, it seems that I agree with, we want to prevent scams. We want to prevent money launderers. I'm totally on board with all of that. But we need to not dampen uh, companies that are actually trying to do the right thing. Financial services providers that are not rehypothecating, that are not selling 1,000 different altcoins and NFTs and all that stuff, which I'm fine with. Let people do their thing. Obviously, we need to stop Ponzi schemes and straight up frauds, but that's one of my biggest worries is that Bitcoin gets sucked into this same umbrella. The same way we're going to treat an NFT is the way we're going to treat Bitcoin, right? Even though they're two very, very different things. I see that separation happening. And it's been getting better and better, especially with the ETFs. We've had big figureheads starting to distinguish the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. Um, but when it comes to regulation, it still seems to fall into a clump together. So to me, that's one of the biggest potential risk factors for individuals in the US and company or countries that are going to treat it similar. It's definitely not an issue for Bitcoin. I don't think Bitcoin has, everything's good for Bitcoin in the end. People will just choose to move and operate in different places that treat their businesses friendlier. Because you can't ban Bitcoin, right? You can only ban yourself from Bitcoin. It's common narrative. I can't recall exactly who came up with that. So yeah, it's not something I'm worried about for Bitcoin itself. I'm just worried for uh again, the ability for individuals to acquire and self-custody Bitcoin in a safe fashion with good companies that are going to help them with their education. Because if there's negative legislation that doesn't let companies like a Swan or any other Bitcoin company operate, you know, how else is this adoption going to grow? Just through Coinbase? I'm pretty sure, the most people get hacked through that platform because there's close to zero knowledge and education provided around self-custody withdrawals. It's just, hey, buy this coin, buy that coin. That's all it's about over
Trade,
there,
trade, trade,
right?
trade. That's what all they're about. That's how they make all their fees, isn't it? Through all the trading.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just terrified of the industry being driven in that direction. That's not the way I want it to go. But again, we'll see.
Yeah. But that goes down to people being educated as well and doing their work on this. Yeah, because if you don't do your work, that's what you will get dragged into. Yeah, like we all got dragged into that at the very beginning. Yeah, with all these altcoins and maybe trying to trade and number go up. Yeah. But when you really do your homework on this and you understand that this is the future, yeah, buying a piece of the future, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
protocol.
yeah. What keeps me bullish and excited about the direction of Bitcoin are, people like you and myself. Even on it doesn't take a company. It just takes individuals that are going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. They're understanding the entire value proposition and then going out to provide education to people for free, right? Not even through some type of business offering. I am always happy to sit down with anyone that reaches out to me and talk to them about Bitcoin. I'd be more than happy to help you set up your hardware wallet. I'd be more than happy to you know, uh, really anything regarding your Bitcoin journey. And I think a majority of Bitcoiners are like that. Once you've actually put in the work to understand it, you want others to be on that same level. It's not something that, we're this private group that wants to keep all the Bitcoins for ourselves. This is something we understand needs to be spread to the entire world. So whether there's companies or not doing this, individuals, getting orange pilled going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, that number goes up and it'll continue to go up as we continue to do, just what Bitcoiners do.
Share the love, isn't it? And share our knowledge. Yeah, because it's changed our lives. Yeah. We wanted to
Absolutely.
change our friends and our families and the wider audience out there's lives as well, because it's amazing. Yeah, that's why I do what I do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Let's talk a little bit about, just to wrap it up. There's a new buzz going around there at the moment. This unrealized gains. I've been seeing this. Yeah, that they're talking about this now. I know they done something like this in Australia recently. Yeah, and I can see this coming to Europe as well. But they're really talking about it now in America.
Yeah, it seems so ridiculous to me that I haven't spent much time to learn the actual mechanics of it. I just don't understand how that would even be possible. Having these unrealized gains, yeah, sure, if a majority of my wealth is in Bitcoin and it's enhanced massively, that does not mean I have the funds to pay the taxes upon it, right? I could have just a very standard job, barely making a living wage, but have a ton of Bitcoin because I've been stacking it over the years. So, I have a hard time understanding how an individual would be impacted at that level. It seems like it would be just devastating and more of a confiscation of assets. If I don't have the funds to pay the tax, do I then have to sell my assets and the government just is forcing me to give up my Bitcoin for it? It's scary for sure. And I don't think it's feasible. I think it's one of those, again, policies that is just it's introduced because it's misunderstood. And I don't know if I'm leaning to it's more on purpose to say, hey, the rich people are the problem, the companies are the problem. It's not the government. We're the good guys. We're not deficit spending. We're not printing money out of thin air. It's them. That they're price gouging you, and the rich people need to give up some of their money to help you. I just think it's more of that signaling, because at the end of the day, the government, they don't need our tax dollars. A majority of their deficit spending is covered by money printing. It's not by tax dollar collection. I think Nayib Bukele said this at the RNC quite a few months ago, regarding the only reason why governments have us pay taxes is to make you believe that they are funded by taxes, when that's not actually the case. It's more of an illusion, a sense of control over the people, because technically they don't need it. They can print money. So why do they need to collect taxes from us? Right? It's keeping the system together. That way, people aren't running away from the dollar in a mass herd or any currency for that matter.
It's just an illusion. That's all it really
Yeah.
is, isn't it? And just trying to keep up with the illusion. Yeah. So going forward, Alex, what do you see going forward for yourself for the next 6 months or a year? What's your plans? Yeah.
Uh, get people to buy as much Bitcoin as possible. That's my job. That's what I love to do personally. I've been quite successful this year. I've got quite a few family members and friends onboarded to Bitcoin, so I'm, been super excited for that. I'm getting texts all the time now, like, "Hey, when is Bitcoin going to do something? It's boring." I love it. I think that's fantastic. I tell them to stack more sats. So I personally just want to get more and more people onboarded. Definitely more self-custody education. I have to admit, I don't think I've gotten some family members off of exchanges as of yet, which is okay. I don't think we're going to see anything disastrous right now. Of course, it's usually when the bear markets comes, more of those things tend to happen. But yeah, that's going to be my goal through this as more and more excitement comes to Bitcoin, the price starts pumping, not only get people to buy more Bitcoin, but also to understand, hey, you need to have a long time horizon here. You need to think 4 to 5 years out. This thing's going to go up crazy in price, but remember, it's probably going to come down pretty hard as well. Um, and you need to get your Bitcoin off the exchange. You need to understand how to use a hardware wallet because I think that makes it even more stickier, right? If they have it in self custody, it's a lot of work to put it back on an exchange and sell it. It's kind of a good way to force people into hodling because they'll text me, "Hey, I want to sell my Bitcoin," then I won't help them, and they're just stuck holding onto their Bitcoin. That's my secret plan.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, Alex, yeah, do you want to drop your handles there and how they want to get in touch
Yeah,
with you to learn more about Bitcoin and Swan as well?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Any Swan inquiries, you can reach out to me directly. My email is just alec@swanbitcoin.com. Super simple, ALEC. I am on Twitter, although it is not my favorite platform. I'm not much of a written guy, but I am Alec_Bitcoin. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm always sharing a bunch of content. I don't do a ton of writing myself, but I do post some awesome CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting videos. That's kind of my passion outside of Bitcoin. So you want some gym motivation or, anything like that, feel free to hit me up and get in touch. But I also make content over on TikTok. That's, kind of one of my things that I'm working on for the future. It's a crypto cesspool over there on TikTok. So I'm trying to bring some Bitcoin education over there. And I believe I'm Alec_Bitcoin there as well. So super simple. You should be able to find me anywhere just through a Google search.
2 days. Good stuff. So if you want to get in touch with Alex, you have all his handles. We've dropped them all in the link below. And if you enjoy the interviews, give us a like and a share. Alex, thanks for your time, and we will be talking soon.
Appreciate it, Lawrence. Good chatting with you. Have a good one.
Thank you.